mental health nursing. Yes. So there are at times when we are communicating that there are blocks or we can say obstructions in the communication or in the therapeutic nurse-patient relationship. So today I'm going to talk about those blocks which are called as therapeutic impasses. Okay, which are going to hinder or act as an obstruction to the therapeutic nurse-patient relationship. Yes, so let us see the meaning of the therapeutic emphasis. Therapeutic emphasis are the blocks in the progress of the nurse patient relationship. Emphasis provokes intense feelings in both the nurse as well as the patient, which can range from the anger and apprehension to feeling of frustration and also love and anger. So that is the blocks which are going to happen where which can have an hindrance in the progress of the nurse patient relationship. So let us see what are the various types of the therapeutic emphasis. So we have got almost 5 types. The first one is the resistance, the second one is the transference, counter-transference. Next is the gift giving, and the last one is the boundary violation. The first one is the resistance. So, what is this resistance? It's usually seen from the client's point of view. It is an inability of the client to be aware about his own anxiety. So, that is called as the resistance. Without his knowledge, okay, he is possessing this anxiety which can have a block in the relationship. This kind of the resistance is learned in the natural way and which can also avoid or act as a reluctance in the relationship. So it can be the anxiety or it can be the anger which is there in the unconscious mind of the client itself. It is naturally learned reluctance to the verbalization of the feelings or experiences. Because of this resistance, the client is not able to verbalize his feelings or his intent. So that is called as the resistance. Moving on to the second one, which is the transference. What is this transference, right? So it is the unconscious response of the client towards the nurse in terms of the experiences of feelings and attitudes towards the nurse, which would have seen in the earlier stages of development in the client himself. So these kinds of feelings or attitudes unconsciously it's projected towards the nurse. So such a kind of a response we can call it as the client is utilizing the defense mechanism of displacement, right? So whatever that the unconsciously has repressed his emotions, so those are being displaced towards the nurse. So that is called as the transference. This kind of transference reaction can have an impact or it can be a harmful thing for a therapeutic relationship with a nurse only if it is ignored and if it is not identified or examined. So very important, as a nurse we should be able to identify if the client is having this transference and whether he is projecting or displacing this kind of a transference which was there in the earlier stages of development itself in the therapeutic relationship. So the next type of the therapeutic emphasis is the counter-transference. It is the nurse's specific emotional feelings or the experiences which is being transferred to the client without her awareness. Okay, that is called as the counter-transference. So, in this, the nurse identifies the patient with her past experiences. So, previously, the nurse would have had a past experience which is being repressed in the unconscious state of the mind. So, when she interacts with the patient, this is such kind of a feelings that she may develop with the patient, wherein she will transfer all her feelings, attitudes, unconsciously she may display it towards the client. So that is called as counter transference. So transference is the unconscious feelings which is projected or displaced from the client to the nurse. Counter transference is from the nurse the feelings which of which is unconsciously in our past experience which is being repressed. Those feelings will be projected towards the client. So that is the counter transference. So these kind of transference and counter transference, it is going to hinder the whole process of the therapeutic communication as well as the therapeutic nurse patient relationship. So if you take the nurse's point of view, what are the counter transferences feelings that she may have? It may be related to the authority, related to the sex, okay, related to the assertive behavior, or related to the independence to solve a problem. Rather than to solve a problem, this itself can be a major problem in the relationship. So that is about the counter transference. The next one is the gift giving. The gift is nothing but it is something which is valuable and it is voluntarily given to another person to convey the gratitude. That is called as the gift. So when as a nurse you are working, you come across many clients, right? At times when the clients feel very happy about the care which is being delivered, okay, so they may feel to convey the gratitude in the form of the gift, which is going to impair the relationship with the client. Yes, unknowingly there may be a feeling of guilt, a feeling of anxiety, a feeling of inhibition of independent decision making of a nurse. So these are the feelings that the nurse can develop because of the gift giving. Okay, so that is another. So when is this gift is going to be an impasse, right? The timing of giving the gift, at what situation the client offered a particular gift, what he meant by giving the gift, that is very important. What was the intent of the client when he was offering a gift to the nurse, right? So that is very important, which is going to hamper the therapeutic relationship with the client. So the last one is the boundary violation. So when is this boundary violation happens, right? When the nurse goes beyond the therapeutic relationship, she develops another kind of social relationship. It can be an economic relationship or a personal relationship with the client. So it is called as the boundary violation. How can we know that the nurse is violating her boundary? So there are certain aspects which will enable us to know that we are violating the boundaries. Even our superiors or our seniors or our peers, right? So they can identify that we are crossing the boundary of a therapeutic relationship, which is not supposed to happen. So what are those? So when the nurse receives the feedback that her behavior is intrusive with the patient and family, so the feedback, at the end of a therapy session or at the end of the nursing care, we receive a feedback, right? So when the feedback is intrusive with the patient and the family, we understand that the nurse has crossed the boundary. Next thing is when the nurse is having a difficulty to set the limit with the patient. Yes, so at times when the nurse crosses her limit, it goes beyond her professional attitude, maybe a social relationship, she may meet the client somewhere, or she may have a personal relationship with the client. So that is when we understand that the nurse has violated her boundary. So next thing is the nurse may relate the client to as a friend or as a family member. Yes, so whatever the relationship the nurse had with the client is a therapeutic one, should have a limit. But when it crosses the boundary, she may relate or she may communicate to the others that okay, so and so is a friend or is a family member. He's like my family member, or relates in terms of a friend. Then we understand that the nurse has crossed her boundary. So the next thing is when the nurse develops the sexual feelings towards the client. So she feels very affectionate. She feels to have an intimate relationship with the client. We understand that the nurse has crossed the boundary. Yeah. So the next thing we understand when the nurse crosses her boundary is when she communicates that that the particular client feels better, or the she is the only person who is able to understand the client. Nobody else or the no other staff is able to understand the feelings of the client. When she communicates that kind of a communication, we understand that the nurse has crossed the boundary. Another thing is when we receive a feedback that she is involved or uh, you know intrusive, involved too much with the patient and family members. So such kind of a feedback also gives us the idea that she has crossed the limit. So another important thing is when we feel or when the nurse feels that the other staffs are very jealous about her. Okay, they envy her. So at those times, when she feels that kind of a feeling, we understand that the nurse has crossed the limits. Now, how to manage the therapeutic emphasis? So, what is the management for it? Let us see in detail. First thing is we need not terminate the therapeutic relationship. Yes, we understand that we have crossed the limit. We understand as a nurse that these are the therapeutic emphasis. So it doesn't mean that we have to end the therapeutic relationship. Rather than that, we can modify our behavior. We can bring about changes in our thoughts, in our feelings. So that is one thing which is very important. As soon as you come to know that you have these problems or you have encountered the therapeutic imposition, need not necessarily that you need to end the therapeutic relationship. The next thing is you can get the support from the other staffs, right? It can be your colleagues, it can be your superiors. Always see to it that whenever you face such kind of a problem, you need to get the support from the other staffs. And also when the other staffs view such kind of things, they hear about such a nurse, such feelings that she is having. So they, as a superiors, they have to go and they have to support the nurse. Another important aspect from the superior part of it is where the nurse superior should be able to identify whether the nurse is having a counter-transference, and also she has to assist her to identify, to be aware of the counter-transference and also overcome that kind of the counter-transference behavior. The next important thing is the self examination. So, as a nurse, you should be able to analyze your own self, identify your own strengths, your limitations, your boundaries. So, find out what are the things that which is not accepted. So, self examination or self analysis is very much important. As a nurse, you need to make time for yourself and examine yourself so that you can modify your behavior by your own self. The next one is to pursue, to find out the source of the problem. Very, very important. When you have a particular problem, you need to find out the cause or the source, from where is it originating. So what is that? So once it is identified, it becomes easier to solve a particular problem. The next is to control so the next is to exercise control over the counter transference. So as a nurse, you understand your own self. You know that these are the unconscious, feelings or the behavior that is there in you. So you need to be having an insight, get an identity or identify your own counter transference, and also exercise to control or manage those counter transference as much as possible. Another important thing to manage the therapeutic emphasis is the use of the therapeutic techniques of communication. So we have to have the techniques of active listening, the reflection, the clarifications. Okay, the all these things are going to help us out to overcome this therapeutic emphasis. So always see to it you follow this or you keep in mind the techniques of the communications of active listening, the reflection, the clarification, which is going to avoid. So the next thing is when the client is having the transference, right? So here the nurse should be able to identify the client is having the transference, also communicate with the client the reason behind the transference and try to sort out the problems of the client. So that is another important thing, to identify the transference of the client. So, the overall goal of a therapeutic relationship should be always kept in the mind. Okay, as a nurse as well as the client, the nurse has to teach the client, educate the client the importance of this kind of a relationship. What are the goal behind the relationship is to make the patient to independently function, and also the client has to cooperate and he has to understand the overall meaning of this kind of a relationship, so that overall the needs of the clients are met, and so that he can lead his the life's challenges in an effective way. So these are all the therapeutic emphasis which can provoke the intense feelings in both the client and the nurse, so that it will block the therapeutic nurse patient relationship, which has to be avoided. Hope you all have understood the topic. Thank you.